Hey all, this is Cassidy with Undead Furniture Company coming to you today with a tutorial on how to achieve this very old world vintagey textured look on furniture. It does look pretty complex, but I promise it is way more simple than you probably think it's going to be. It only takes a couple steps and it happens to be one of my absolute best-selling finishes. So here's a piece that we're going to be working on today. This is something that I started a couple months ago. I had no clear vision where I was going with it. I was hoping that as I just played around with paints, I would make something of it. That worked out great. So it's been sitting and it needs a new paint job. So as always with anything, clean your piece, scuff sand it if you need to, and make sure and use a really, really good primer. I like to use bonding primers. Luckily hasn't been sealed. This is a very porous paint that is over top, so the chalk paints that we're going to be using can layer right over top of this. Here are the products that we're going to be using today. It's very, very simple. I actually don't even know if we're going to be using this brown. So chalk-based paints are my go-to always. We'll need a white chalk-based paint and you'll need a black chalk-based paint. Now you can use a very, very dark brown that's almost black. And you can use a bright white or a creamy white. You know, any of those variations. You can also use kind of a sandy color. It will change the overall look, but it's still, no matter what, because we're going to be using this gel wax over top, it's going to change the color anyways, and all of those kind of variations fit in with that. So as long as you remember your exact color formulation, if you want to replicate it, it's fine to kind of vary on these two base colors. Now, you will need a texture additive. I don't think I Love Hue is selling this anymore. So Salt Wash is another really good one, and you can also buy it from Wise Owl. And then the last thing that we're going to need, and it has to be this specific brand, is this Krylon Antiquing Wax. So if you look here, this is it's like a gel wax. So it is not like the cans of hard wax that we're used to, or, you know, DIY makes a very buttery wax, but it's still in that solid form. This works kind of like, if you were to glaze something and then wipe it back, but glazes typically have a very, very short working time and they dry too quickly. This is water-based, so you can add water, which is something that I've done in this can here. They're identical, but you can add water to this. You can also resaturate it a little bit with working time. As long as it hasn't fully cured, this is a very, very forgiving product, and it's going to give you the perfect finish that we're looking for. Alrighty, so now that I've talked your ear off for the last 3 minutes, first thing you're going to do is take your texture medium. Make sure and read the directions on how much to put into your paint. It varies from brand to brand. Add it into your black base paint, and once you get that mixed, you're going to stipple the black texture onto the entire piece. What I like to do is, after I've completed the entire piece and everything's dry, I will go back through and remix just a little bit thicker of a texture and blot it on in certain areas instead of over the entire piece, so it's more raised in certain areas. Then once that is completely dry, you're going to take your white base color or your creamy white or your light tan, whatever color you've chosen for this, and you are going to do a pretty heavy dry brush over the entire piece. So the goal is to be able to still see all of that black underneath, but to have, you know, variations in the saturation of the white over top. So when we go and apply this antiquing wax over top and we wipe it back, there's going to be variations of the brown color over top with all of that black peeking through. I like to mix, I would say it's probably 2/3 antiquing wax to 1/3 part water, just to water it down enough to where it's easier to move around, you're not using as much product, and it's still a gel type form. So once that white is completely dry, go ahead and mix that antiquing glaze up, and then you are going to paint over the entire piece and then wipe it back in the same direction, similar as to what you would do if it was a stain. And the last step that I like to do is I take more of that antiquing wax and blot it on the corners or places that I want it to look more heavily saturated to give it more variation of that brown over top. You can also water down your initial black color and use that in some of the corners to add more dimension, but you're totally fine just using the antiquing wax. And my favorite part about this Kryolan antiquing wax is because it is a wax, it is a sealer. So once you're done with that last step, you are done. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. Again, this is one of my absolute best-selling finishes. Anytime I've ever done this on a piece, regardless of shape, it is sold probably within 24, 48 hours. Thanks y'all for sticking around. Be sure to check out my website for all things hardware. And if you're interested in more tutorials, go ahead and give me a follow.